Welcome back to America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula and America's Medicare Associates with Nolan Baker, Scott Kirshner, and Chaz Price. 419-794-3030 is the phone number. The website, arhq.com. So many people out there think retirement planning, starts when you're in your 60s, when you're in that retirement red zone. But the truth of it, as we've said many times here on the show, it's never really too early to start planning for your retirement. And actually, there are actionable items you can do at any phase of your life. If you're in your 50s, for example, the website Go Banking Rate says it is time to figure out your retirement income gap. So before we dive into that, let's take a step back. What is an income gap? And then how do you go about calculating that?
There is a couple of good ways to take a look at the income gap. And I think, for those of you that are looking to plan ahead, knowing what your income gap is, I think, crucial. We have been doing a lot of presentations talking about this. It goes back to one is we talked about Social Security. And, one of the things that we've had as a common observation for a lot of folks, it doesn't make sense to draw Social Security early and take a lifetime penalty before taking it for your full retirement age. In fact, in some cases, it may wait and may be more beneficial to wait until later in life past your full retirement age because you get that automatic increase. Now, in that case, you could have a gap because you're not drawing Social Security. And so you need to figure out how much is the gap to bridge from when you retire to when you turn on Social Security. That's one gap to take a look at, and that's exactly what our office can do. In fact, we can run that Social Security optimization report, show you how to get more income towards retirement and what might be your best approach. But number two is looking at what is called the income gap for your total lifetime income. What we oftentimes do in number two is you want to look at what is your ideal monthly income. So what do you need to have every month as reliable income? And I think all roads lead to income, whether they're, buying an annuity, Scott, from the insurance side, or whether they're buying stocks on the investment side. I mean, all roads ultimately intersect and lead towards wanting to have income in retirement time. And when we look at that income, what we're looking at is what does it take for minimum monthly income? And then the gap question that I would have is how much of that is provided by things that are strong income sources, things that are income that you could count on, for a set period of time or for the rest of your life. That would be things like your Social Security income. That would be things like a pension income. That could be annuity income if you have some income. So this calculator on the portfolio reliance calculator will help us show us what is the gap on reliable income versus what an individual has in their portfolio. And by doing that, what it does is it shows the portfolio withdrawal rate. So you're able to make some adjustments and say, does it make sense to maybe move some of my investment portfolio to cover the income gap into something that has more predictable income? And if so, how would that impact the portfolio withdrawal rate? Chaz, we were just recently working on another case, and when we looked at it, there was a pretty big gap. The withdrawal rate that this person had was about a 3% withdrawal rate per year. Now, on the surface, I think that is pretty realistic. By shifting some money over into more predictable income and having another source that provided more income, in this case, we could use like an annuity either for a period certain, or we could use an annuity that provided an income rider for life. By shifting money over, reducing the amount of money that's subject to the unknowns of the stock market, what we're able to do is reduce the withdrawal rate from 3% down under 2%. So that means that investment assets, most likely you could probably cover that just through dividends and interest alone, was another way to take a look at how to cover what the income gap is. So there's a couple of income gaps that you want to look at in retirement time. One is the income gap that if you need to bridge the gap between retirement and Social Security, you can do that. The other one is bridging the gap between, what you need on a monthly basis and figuring out how much more is predictable. The other gap that I see a lot of times is people decide to retire early, which is great. And if you feel like you're in a good position and you want to retire before the age 65, the other gap to take a look at is the healthcare gap.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to make sure that you have that gap covered as well because you're going to be looking at out-of-pocket expenses if you retire early, where you're going to have to go on a health insurance plan if you're not afforded any coverage through a spouse's employer. You retire early, you're going to have a health insurance plan through the marketplace. And it's income based. It's based on your income, your reportable income. So there's ways, and this is why we work together so well. There are ways to reduce your reportable income, lower that reportable income to get you a little more manageable healthcare cost if you do retire early. And even, if you don't retire early, you still need to be prepared for that Medicare costs, out-of-pocket expenses for those things that may not be covered by Medicare. Long-term care is one of those.
Well, it's a good point. I mean, it starts out by looking at the beginning years and then going all the way to the end, looking at kind of more the end goals. And Chaz, I know, again, we were working on a case together. I think that's one of the great things about a team approach is getting a couple set of eyes to be able to take a look at this. And when we were going through this plan, what we were doing is we were working with this person getting ready to retire. And we were showing him the level of confidence that he had overall within his plan. So not only addressing the income gaps, we were helping him gain better confidence about the investment decisions and allocations. And, one of the things that jumped out to me is when we were running that analysis, we added the issue of what happens if he, down the road, towards the end of his life, needed long-term care and found out there was a pretty big income gap there.
Yeah.
And I know that long-term care is not an issue that people really like to talk much about. I mean, it's never fun thinking about getting older and slowing down or even things like nursing homes. But the advantage of talking about it now while he's younger is, he's got time to develop some solutions and ideas. And unfortunately, a lot of people end up in a crisis mode, and that's where this big income gap at the end happens. And so, helping develop a plan that says if you or a loved one needs long-term care, how do we keep you out of a facility can help also with that income gap down the road. So a lot of ways, Chaz, what do you think about income gaps and how do you help people fill those gaps and how do you help people calculate the income gaps in retirement?
Yeah, well, you guys have just described some of the main ones, and I would just kind of organize those thoughts into kind of phases for our clients. And what we've described really are some of the expenses in an early phase, a mid phase, and then the late stages of retirement. And during the earlier phases, as you mentioned, Social Security, you've got some flexibility there to decide when you want to take it. And so if you decide not to take Social Security as soon as you retire, let's say you retire at 65 and you're going to hold off until full retirement, which may be for 67 for you, on that cash flows analysis that's part of that retirement income analysis that we run, it'll show some pretty big cash flows early in retirement. And so, but we know that going into it because we're waiting for Social Security. But then once Social Security hits, the cash flows, the gap that you have for the rest of, let's say, your mid-retirement years is much lower. And then in those last years, the final stages of retirement, when you have health care, you're still going to have those gaps. But really what we're looking to do is when you add up all of the years of income gap, that's the nest egg that you need to have to retire. And if we're able to identify one scenario, i.e. taking Social Security at 67, and compare the gap that's the nest egg that's necessary for that scenario, compare it to another scenario where we take Social Security at 70 and look at the gap in the total cash flows and nest egg needed. If a rational person would say, I want to retire using the method that requires the least amount of money. And the scenario that requires you to have the least amount of money is generally the one that has the highest probability of success. But there's just a lot that goes into it. The Social Security, the health care, and then the long-term care component. So the beauty of the financial planning process is it's different for everybody. It's kind of like I use the analogy all the time of painting a picture in the form of cash flows. And the picture I paint of you is going to look a lot different than the one I paint of Nolan. So that's our job. That's what we'll do as a team is paint your retirement picture, make the cash flows and the plan look like what you want, essentially.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I mean, this is the entire process that we put together here at America's Retirement Headquarters. It's called the Independent Income System. So if you get a chance, feel free to Google Independent Income System, or if you also get a minute, go over to our YouTube channel. You can click on the link and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube, just type in America's Retirement Headquarters. Super excited that we have over 1,200 subscribers now, and lots of people watching videos. We've got several videos talking about, how to create a retirement income plan on this particular topic. So if you're listening, you're close to or in retirement time, and income is your goal, just like Chaz said, our goal is to help you get the most income in retirement time for the least amount of dollars. And if you're not sure if your plan is going to accomplish that, that's why we can take you through some of these tools that we have available for you.
It's real simple to reach out. Give a call, 419-794-3030, or you can go to the website, arhq.com. I mentioned a second ago that, this is an actionable thing people in their 50s should start doing, is creating, figuring out what their retirement income gap is going to be. I'm aware of the fact that we may have viewers and listeners that are a little bit past their 50s. And as I said, where it's never too early to start planning for retirement, it's never really too late. Go ahead and start taking those steps now and figure out what you need to do to get you to, through, and beyond retirement. 419-794-3030, arhq.com.